Assalamu alaikum and good evening everyone. I'm Anzir Amin. Today I'm going to discuss on the topic barriers of effective communication. So, the communication barriers implies any form of hindrance in the flow of communication. That is, when one party is not able to get the message conveyed by the another party accurately, clearly, and intently. So, here we have different barriers like physical barriers, semantic barriers, personal barriers, psychological barriers, cultural barriers, attitude barriers, and physiological barriers. So, now here I am going to explain each one in detail. So, the first barrier is the physical barrier, which we can say that these barriers are the result of surrounding, that is physical environment. It can happen due to weather or climate, distance between sender and receiver, noise, then workspace distance, etc. So the next barrier is semantic barrier. Semantic barrier, also called linguistic barriers, which means barriers in the language communication. So this can also happen lead to misunderstand between sender and receiver due to various uses of signals and messages which in while in the process of communication. Example, if the sender has poor communication skill, there will be barriers in the communication. So the third one is personal barrier. So personal barrier, this barrier are the factors of sender and receiver, like life experience, behavior, attitude of the persons. It may be came from the lack of knowledge, vocabulary, lack of willingness, etc. So the fourth one is psychological barrier. So, as the name suggests, it is because of the psychology of a person, like attitude of a person, perception of a person, or the emotion, opinion, or the status consciousness of a sender. So, this can happen in communication barrier. And the other one is cultural barriers. So we know that if a person have the knowledge of different culture, they can communicate well and very easily. But if a person have no knowledge about other people's culture, there will be a difficultness in the process of communication, and he cannot speak well in there, and he cannot understand their culture. So it will becomes to the communication barrier. And the next one is attitude barrier. So attitude barrier means the attitude of person can affect communications, which means, for example, active or energetic employee can communicate his clients or her clients very well. So if he have the energy activity, he can communicate well. If he has no that much communication or attitude like active or energetic, it will lead to lack of communication, and there will be a communication barrier. So lastly we have physiological barrier. So the physiological barrier means which is came out of the physical state of a person, physical state of sender and the receiver, which is including physical inability to receive, to sense the messages which other person have sent. So the sender has already sent the messages. So if the receiver can't like his physical inability, because of his physical inability he can't take or sense the messages from the sender, it can lead to the barrier, communication barrier, that is physiological barrier. And these are the communication barriers, which are the elements of communication barriers. So here we can overcome these barriers, or we can make our communication very effective. So for that we can make sure our ideas are clear before communication, and we can use languages which receiver can understand very easily, and make sure our messages to the point and short, and we can take care of our body language, tone, and the content of the messages, and we can listen before we speak again. And the other thing is, do not interpret when others are speaking. and we can make our message judgment free. So I hope you all understand what is communication barrier, and thank you.